Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Marcus Snyder had always believed that military service was about protecting the innocent. After 12 years in special forces, including classified operations that would never appear in any official record, he'd seen enough of humanity's darkest impulses to appreciate the simple goodness of coming home to his wife Mercedes and 6-year-old daughter Emma. Their small house in Cedar Falls wasn't much, a modest 2-bedroom rental in a working-class neighborhood, but represented everything Marcus fought to preserve. Mercedes had decorated it with second-hand furniture and Emma's artwork, creating a sanctuary where Marcus could forget the things he'd done in service to his country. Marcus specialized in what the military euphemistically called direct action operations. His team eliminated high-value targets who were beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement: terrorists, war criminals, and predators who thought themselves untouchable. He was very good at making dangerous men disappear permanently and without trace. Mercedes Johns had married Marcus when she was 22 and he was 24, fresh out of his first deployment. She'd been drawn to his quiet intensity and the security his military career promised. But 8 years of marriage and constant deployments had worn down her patience and amplified her growing dissatisfaction with their modest lifestyle. Mercedes worked part-time at a local beauty salon, but her real ambition was to live the kind of life she saw on social media: expensive clothes, luxury vacations, and the admiration of people who mattered. Marcus's military salary couldn't provide that lifestyle, and his frequent absences left her feeling abandoned and resentful. Emma Snyder was the bright spot in both their lives, a precocious 6-year-old with her father's green eyes and her mother's blonde hair. She adored Marcus unconditionally, counting down the days until his returns from deployment with a homemade calendar covered in hand-drawn hearts. Chuck Logan owned 17 rental properties throughout Cedar Falls, and his business model relied on exploiting tenants who couldn't afford better options. At 53, Chuck had perfected the art of intimidation through legal technicalities and emotional manipulation. He particularly enjoyed having power over desperate women with children. Chuck had been watching Mercedes Snyder for months, noting her growing frustration with Marcus's absences and her obvious hunger for a more affluent lifestyle. When Marcus deployed for a 6-month peacekeeping mission to Eastern Europe, Chuck saw an opportunity to expand his collection of special arrangements with attractive female tenants. The trouble began in Marcus's 3rd month of deployment. Mercedes had been struggling with the rent since losing her salon job due to chronic tardiness and attitude problems. Chuck's initial offer seemed generous: reduced rent in exchange for household services that gradually became more personal and demanding. Marcus's first indication that something was wrong came through Emma's video calls. His usually cheerful daughter seemed subdued, often glancing nervously off camera when Mercedes wasn't in the room. When Marcus asked about the strange man's voice he occasionally heard in the background, Mercedes quickly explained that Chuck was just fixing things around the house. The neighborhood had begun to notice changes too. Cassie Fuentes, a nurse who lived next door, observed Chuck's increasingly frequent visits and Mercedes' apparent comfort with his presence. More troubling were the times she'd seen Emma alone outside, while Mercedes and Chuck were inside with the curtains drawn. Will Baldwin, Marcus's former Special Forces teammate who lived 2 hours away, had promised to check on the family during the deployment. His scheduled visit in month 4 revealed a situation that made his combat-trained instincts trigger immediate alarm signals. Will found Chuck Logan lounging in Marcus's living room wearing only a bathrobe, while Mercedes served him breakfast in a negligee. Emma sat quietly in the corner, unwashed, and wearing the same clothes Will had seen her in during his previous visit. "Who the hell are you?" Chuck demanded, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Will's response was controlled, but carried the unmistakable edge of a man capable of extreme violence. "I'm a friend of Marcus Snyder, the man whose house you're sitting in, the man whose wife you appear to be entertaining." Mercedes flushed red, but tried to maintain composure. "Will, this isn't what it looks like. Chuck's been helping us with maintenance issues. Will looked around the house, noting the obvious signs of Chuck's permanent residence, his clothes in the master bedroom, his personal items throughout the house, and most disturbing, a sophisticated camera system that hadn't been there during his previous visit. Emma, sweetheart, Will said gently, why don't you show me your room? Emma's bedroom revealed the full scope of the situation. Hidden cameras were positioned to monitor her activities, and Will's trained eye spotted other surveillance equipment that had no legitimate purpose in a child's room. Emma whispered to him that the scary man watched her all the time and that Mommy said she had to be extra good or Daddy might never come home. Will's phone call to Marcus that night was carefully coded, but the message was clear. You need to know that your home situation has become compromised. Multiple unknowns have established residence, and your primary asset is in potential danger. Marcus understood immediately. His daughter was at risk, his wife had betrayed him, and a predator had moved into his home. The man who had eliminated terrorists across 3 continents felt a cold fury settle into his bones. The same emotional state that had made him legendarily effective at making problems disappear permanently. Marcus began planning his response that same night, using skills honed through years of operations against enemies who thought themselves beyond retribution. Chuck Logan and Mercedes Snyder had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who made warfare his specialty. Chapter 2. The Predator's Web. Chuck Logan's systematic takeover of Marcus's life followed a pattern he'd perfected with other military wives. The first month involved establishing dependency through small favors and emotional support during the husband's absence. The second month introduced physical intimacy through carefully orchestrated seduction and manipulation. The third month established control through documentation and implicit threats. Mercedes had fallen into Chuck's trap more easily than most. Her resentment toward Marcus for his constant deployments made her receptive to Chuck's attention and gifts. When Chuck offered to waive rent in exchange for companionship, Mercedes convinced herself she was making a practical decision rather than betraying her marriage. Chuck's true nature emerged gradually. He installed cameras throughout the house under the pretense of security, but Mercedes soon realized the cameras were focused on her and Emma rather than potential intruders. When she protested, Chuck reminded her of their arrangement and suggested that Marcus might not be understanding about her situation if he learned the full truth. The psychological manipulation escalated when Chuck moved his personal belongings into the house. He claimed his own residence was being renovated, but Mercedes understood the real message. He now owned her home, her body, and her choices. Resistance would result in exposure, homelessness, and the loss of her daughter. Emma became Chuck's ultimate leverage. He never touched the child inappropriately, but his constant surveillance and veiled threats created an atmosphere of terror. Emma understood that the scary man controlled her mother completely, and that any resistance might result in her father never returning from his mission. Chuck's business model relied on documentation and blackmail. He recorded every intimate encounter with Mercedes, photographed her in compromising positions, and carefully documented her willing participation in their arrangement. If she ever tried to expose him or leave, the evidence would destroy her credibility and her marriage. Nicholas Mueller, Chuck's longtime friend and business partner, helped maintain the surveillance systems and provided muscle when tenants became problematic. Nicholas had served time for assault and enjoyed intimidating people on Chuck's behalf. Together, they had perfected a system of control that kept their victims silent and compliant. The breaking point came when Marcus called unexpectedly during one of Chuck's visits. Mercedes was forced to maintain a normal conversation while Chuck listened from the bedroom, occasionally making gestures that reminded her of his power over her situation. "Daddy!" Emma had managed to grab the phone briefly. "When are you coming home? The scary man is here all the time, and Mommy cries." Chuck's face darkened with rage as Mercedes quickly took the phone back and ended the call with nervous explanations about Emma's imagination. That night, Chuck made his expectations crystal clear. Emma needed to be properly managed, or their arrangement would need to include additional terms. Marcus's investigation from overseas revealed the full scope of Chuck's operation. Using military intelligence resources and contacts in federal law enforcement, Marcus discovered that Chuck Logan was suspected in 3 other cases involving military families. The pattern was always the same: target vulnerable wives during deployments, establish control through manipulation and documentation, then exploit the situation for long-term financial and sexual gratification. Austin Hicks, a federal investigator specializing in predatory crimes, had been building a case against Chuck for 2 years, but lacked sufficient evidence for prosecution. Chuck was careful to operate within legal gray areas, and his victims were too intimidated to cooperate with investigations. Marcus's contact with Austin revealed additional disturbing information. Chuck's camera systems weren't just for blackmail. He sold footage to online networks that specialized in voyeuristic content featuring military families. Emma's recorded activities were being distributed to predators worldwide, generating substantial income for Chuck's operation. The revelation that his daughter was being exploited for profit pushed Marcus beyond simple anger into the cold, calculating mindset that had made him legendary among Special Forces operators. This wasn't just about punishing betrayal. It was about eliminating a predator who threatened children and would continue threatening them until permanently stopped. Marcus began assembling a team using contacts from his military career. Clyde Powell, an expert in electronic surveillance and cyber warfare, would handle Chuck's camera systems and digital footprint. Wallace Sweeney, a former Navy SEAL with expertise in psychological operations, would help design Chuck's psychological destruction. Todd Aldrich, a demolitions expert, would provide technical support for more permanent solutions. Marcus's plan required precise timing and coordination. He needed to rescue Emma immediately, document Chuck's crimes thoroughly, and eliminate both Chuck and Nicholas permanently, while ensuring Mercedes faced appropriate consequences for her betrayal. The operation would require all his skills as a Special Forces operator and his complete willingness to operate outside legal boundaries. Chuck Logan had spent years preying on military families, believing that deployed soldiers were powerless to protect their loved ones. He was about to learn that some soldiers brought the war home with them, and that predators sometimes became prey to much more dangerous hunters. Chapter 3: The Hunter's Return. Marcus's early return from deployment was facilitated through military channels that didn't officially exist. His commanding officer, Colonel Eric Wilson, understood that certain situations required immediate attention, and that Marcus had skills uniquely suited to handling problems that conventional law enforcement couldn't address. "This is personal leave," Colonel Wilson explained during their coded conversation. "Whatever you need to do to resolve your family situation has our complete support, but it never happened officially." Marcus's transport to the United States included equipment and support materials that would help him deal with Chuck Logan permanently. The military had its own interest in protecting service members' families from predators, and Marcus's reputation for solving impossible problems made him the perfect person to send a message to others who might target military families. Clyde Powell met Marcus at a safe house 50 miles from Cedar Falls, where they established their operational base. Clyde had already begun infiltrating Chuck's surveillance network, discovering the full extent of the predator's documentation and distribution systems. "It's worse than we thought," Clyde reported. "Chuck's got cameras in every room, including Emma's bedroom and bathroom. The footage is being uploaded to servers in 3 different countries and sold through networks that specialize in this kind of content." Marcus studied the surveillance layouts with professional detachment, compartmentalizing his fury to maintain operational effectiveness. How many other families? At least 12 active targets, probably more we haven't identified yet. Chuck's been doing this for years, and he's got a network of landlords in military towns across the region who share information and resources. Wallace Sweeney arrived with psychological profiles of Chuck Logan and Nicholas Mueller based on intelligence gathered from their previous victims. Wallace's expertise in breaking enemy agents made him ideally suited to designing their psychological destruction. "Chuck's a classic predator," Wallace explained. "He needs control and documentation to feel powerful. His greatest fear is exposure and loss of control. Nicholas is simpler. He's a sociopath who enjoys violence, but only when he has overwhelming advantage. Todd Aldrich brought the technical capabilities needed for permanent solutions. His expertise in making things disappear without trace would be essential for the operation's final phase. The team's first objective was Emma's immediate rescue without alerting Chuck to their presence. Using intelligence gathered through Clyde's surveillance infiltration, they identified Chuck's patterns and established windows of opportunity. Chuck typically visited Mercedes between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on weekdays, when Emma was at school and the neighborhood was less active. Nicholas usually provided security from his car parked outside, but his attention was focused on potential threats from the street rather than from other directions. Marcus's approach to the house was invisible to both the official surveillance and Nicholas's observation. Years of combat operations had taught him to move through hostile territory without detection, and Chuck's suburban neighborhood presented no significant challenges. Cassie Fuentes, the neighbor who had been monitoring the situation, was quietly recruited as an ally. Her nursing background and genuine concern for Emma made her willing to help, especially when Marcus explained the full scope of what Chuck was doing to his family. The rescue operation required split-second timing. While Chuck was inside with Mercedes and Nicholas was distracted by a staged incident Cassie created in the street, Marcus infiltrated the house through Emma's bedroom window. Emma's reaction to seeing her father was pure joy mixed with terror. "Daddy, you came back, but the scary man said you wouldn't." Marcus held his daughter close, noting her weight loss and the fearful way she constantly glanced toward the door. "Daddy's here now, sweetheart. The scary man can't hurt you anymore." Marcus carried Emma through the window to Cassie's house, where she would be safe while he dealt with Chuck and Mercedes. Emma's whispered description of what Chuck had done, the cameras, the watching, the way he made Mommy cry, filled in the final details Marcus needed for his operational planning. Chuck's discovery that Emma was missing triggered exactly the kind of panic reaction Marcus had expected. His frantic search of the house and angry confrontation with Mercedes revealed his true nature and provided additional documentation of his crimes. "Where is she?" Chuck screamed to Mercedes, grabbing her roughly. "That little brat better not have said anything to anyone, or we're both finished." Mercedes's terrified response revealed the full extent of her subjugation. "I don't know. She was in her room an hour ago. Maybe she went to Cassie's house." Chuck's decision to search the neighborhood with Nicholas gave Marcus the opportunity he needed to establish the next phase of his operation. While Chuck was distracted, Marcus infiltrated their surveillance center and began documenting their entire operation. The evidence Marcus collected was overwhelming. Thousands of hours of footage from multiple families, financial records showing profits from selling exploitation material, and correspondence with other predators in their network. Chuck Logan wasn't just a local threat. He was part of a sophisticated criminal organization that specialized in targeting military families. Marcus's communication with federal investigator Austin Hicks provided the legal framework for what would happen next. "We've got enough evidence to arrest Chuck and his entire network," Austin confirmed. "But prosecution is tricky. Good lawyers might get him reduced sentences, and he'd be back on the street in a few years." Marcus's response was characteristically direct. "That's not acceptable. Some problems require permanent solutions." Austin understood what Marcus was suggesting, and his response was carefully neutral. "I didn't hear that. But if certain problems were to solve themselves permanently, I wouldn't be surprised. Some predators have unfortunate accidents." Marcus began the final phase of his operation that evening, using skills that had eliminated high-value targets across multiple theaters of operation. Chuck Logan and Nicholas Mueller were about to learn that some hunters were far more dangerous than any prey they'd ever stalked. Chapter 4. The Web Unravels. Chuck Logan's panic escalated throughout the evening as he realized Emma's disappearance might indicate a larger threat to his operation. His years of preying on military families had made him paranoid about eventually facing retaliation, but he'd always assumed deployed soldiers were too distant to pose immediate danger. Nicholas Mueller's search of the neighborhood revealed nothing, but his criminal instincts warned him that something significant had changed. The way neighbors avoided eye contact and the subtle tension in the air suggested that their operation had been compromised. "Someone's been watching us," Nicholas reported to Chuck. "The question is who and how much they know." Chuck's response revealed the depth of his paranoia and the extent of his criminal network. "Call Salvatore Barber and tell him we might need to activate the contingency plan. If someone's investigating us, we need to eliminate the evidence and disappear." Salvatore Barber operated a disposal service that specialized in making problems disappear permanently. His team had helped Chuck eliminate 3 previous threats over the years: investigators who got too close, victims who tried to expose him, and witnesses who posed ongoing risks to his operation. Marcus monitored these communications through Clyde's infiltration of their surveillance systems, gaining valuable intelligence about the full scope of Chuck's criminal network. The revelation that Chuck had killed previous victims transformed this from a rescue operation into a war against a sophisticated criminal organization. Mercedes's psychological state deteriorated rapidly as she realized the true nature of her situation. Chuck's mask of charming manipulation fell away completely, revealing the controlling predator underneath. His threats became explicit and violent as he blamed her for Emma's disappearance. "If your husband's back, if he knows anything about our arrangement, you're going to fix it," Chuck snarled, "or I'll make sure both you and that little brat disappear permanently." Mercedes's terrified call to Marcus was monitored and recorded by Clyde's team. Her desperate plea for forgiveness and mercy revealed her complete understanding of Chuck's true nature and her own complicity in endangering Emma. "Marcus, please," Mercedes sobbed into the phone. "I know what I did was wrong, but I was scared and alone, and," Chuck said, "he said things would happen to Emma if I didn't cooperate. Please don't let him hurt her." Marcus's response was coldly professional. "Emma is safe." "You're not. Chuck Logan is going to die tonight, and you're going to prison. The only question is whether you help us eliminate his network or face federal charges as an accessory to child exploitation." The offer of cooperation versus prosecution was standard operational procedure, but Marcus had no intention of showing Mercedes mercy regardless of her choice. She had traded their daughter's safety for personal comfort and financial benefit, a betrayal that warranted permanent consequences. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation against Nicholas Mueller began that evening with a series of carefully orchestrated events designed to isolate him from Chuck and make him vulnerable to elimination. Using intelligence gathered about Nicholas's criminal history and psychological profile, Wallace triggered a cascade of paranoid responses. The first element involved Nicholas's parole officer receiving anonymous tips about violations of his release conditions. The second involved his known associates receiving information suggesting Nicholas was cooperating with federal investigators. The third involved his ex-wife receiving evidence of his current criminal activities and threats to expose him unless he paid substantial blackmail. Nicholas's mental state deteriorated rapidly as multiple threats emerged simultaneously. His criminal associates began avoiding him. His parole officer scheduled surprise visits, and his ex-wife made demands that suggested someone was feeding her information about his activities. "Someone's setting me up," Nicholas told Chuck during an increasingly frantic phone conversation. "Everything's falling apart at once, and I think we're being targeted by professionals." Chuck's response revealed his willingness to sacrifice Nicholas to protect himself. "Handle your own problems. I've got bigger issues to deal with right now." The psychological pressure on Nicholas intensified when Wallace arranged for him to receive photographs of himself taken from impossible angles. Surveillance shots that demonstrated someone with professional capabilities was watching his every move. The message was clear. He was being hunted by someone far more dangerous than any threat he'd previously faced. Todd Aldrich's preparation for the elimination phase involved establishing multiple scenarios for making Chuck and Nicholas disappear without trace. His expertise in demolitions and accident reconstruction would ensure their deaths appear to be unfortunate incidents rather than targeted assassinations. Marcus's final communication with Colonel Wilson confirmed that his operation had full military support. "Handle this however you see fit. These predators have targeted multiple military families, and we can't allow that to continue. You have complete operational autonomy. The authorization to use lethal force without constraint freed Marcus to implement solutions that would eliminate Chuck's entire network permanently. His reputation for making high-value targets disappear without leaving evidence would be essential for ensuring that this particular predatory operation never threatened another family. Chuck Logan's final mistake was attempting to eliminate Mercedes as a potential witness. His plan to stage her suicide, while making it appear she'd killed herself due to guilt over Emma's disappearance, demonstrated his complete sociopathic nature and provided Marcus with the perfect opportunity to implement his own final solution. Marcus had spent his military career protecting innocent people from predators who thought themselves untouchable. Chuck Logan and Nicholas Mueller were about to learn that some predators eventually encountered much more dangerous hunters, and that military families were protected by soldiers who brought the war home when necessary. Chapter 5. The Hunt Begins. Chuck Logan's plan to eliminate Mercedes revealed the full sociopathic nature that had allowed him to prey on military families for years. His method was characteristically calculated: stage her apparent suicide in a way that would make her seem overwhelmed by guilt and despair over her daughter's disappearance. She's becoming unstable, Chuck explained to Nicholas during their planning session. If she talks to investigators or her husband, everything falls apart. Better to cut our losses and eliminate the liability. Nicholas's enthusiasm for violence made him the perfect accomplice for Chuck's plan. His criminal history included 2 previous deaths that had been ruled accidental, and he understood how to stage crime scenes to avoid investigation. Marcus monitored their planning through Clyde's surveillance infiltration, gaining detailed intelligence about their timeline and methods. Chuck's willingness to commit murder to protect his operation confirmed that he represented a continuing threat that required permanent elimination. Salvatore Barber's arrival in Cedar Falls brought additional complications to Marcus's operation. Barber's disposal team specialized in making entire situations disappear, not just individual targets, but all evidence and witnesses connected to problematic investigations. Clean sweep protocol, Barber explained to Chuck during their covert meeting. We eliminate everyone who knows anything, stage it as a murder-suicide involving the unstable military wife, and make the whole situation look like domestic tragedy gone wrong. The scope of Barber's plan included killing Mercedes, eliminating any neighbors who might have witnessed Chuck's activities, and if necessary, staging Emma's death as collateral damage in her mother's psychological breakdown. The plan's ruthless efficiency demonstrated why Chuck's network had operated successfully for years. Marcus's response to this escalation was swift and decisive. His team shifted from evidence gathering to active combat operations, using skills honed through years of eliminating high-value targets in hostile territory. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation against Nicholas reached its culmination when he received a package containing photographs of his own apartment taken from inside, along with detailed information about his daily routines and personal vulnerabilities. The message included a single line: "We know everything. Surrender now or face consequences." Nicholas's mental breakdown was immediate and complete. Years of intimidating others had never prepared him to be the target of professional psychological warfare. His panic call to Chuck revealed his complete loss of nerve and his willingness to abandon their operation to save himself. "They're inside my apartment, Chuck. They know everything about me. I'm getting out of town before they decide to make me disappear." Chuck's response demonstrated his complete lack of loyalty to his associates. "Fine, run. But if you talk to anyone about our operation, I'll make sure Barber finds you wherever you go." Nicholas's attempt to flee that evening provided Marcus with the perfect opportunity to implement Todd Aldrich's elimination protocol. The staged car accident on a mountain road outside town would appear to be the result of Nicholas's panic driving and poor weather conditions. Todd's expertise in demolitions and accident reconstruction ensured that Nicholas's death would be thoroughly convincing to investigators. The explosive device attached to his vehicle's brake system would activate when he attempted to navigate the sharp curves of the mountain road, sending his car through the guardrail and into the ravine below. Nicholas Mueller's last moments were spent in terror, realizing too late that his years of violence and intimidation had made him a target for someone far more professional and deadly. His car's fiery crash eliminated not just his life, but any evidence of the device that had caused his death. Cassie Fuentes' role in the operation expanded when Marcus revealed the full scope of Chuck's criminal network and the immediate threat to multiple families in the neighborhood. Her nursing background and natural compassion made her ideal for helping evacuate vulnerable residents before the final phase of the operation. How many other children are at risk? Cassie asked when Marcus explained Chuck's broader operation. At least 12 families that we've identified, probably more, Marcus replied. Chuck's network has been operating for years, and they eliminate anyone who tries to expose them. Cassie's decision to help came immediately. Tell me what you need me to do. Mercedes' final conversation with Marcus revealed her complete understanding of the consequences she faced for her betrayal. Her desperate attempts to justify her actions only highlighted the selfishness and willful blindness that had led her to endanger their daughter. I never meant for it to go this far, Mercedes pleaded. Chuck said he just wanted companionship, and the rent was so expensive, and you were always gone. Marcus's response was characteristically direct. You traded our daughter's safety for free rent and sexual gratification. You enabled a predator who was documenting and selling footage of Emma. There's no justification for that, and there's no forgiveness. The revelation that Mercedes had known about the cameras and Emma's exploitation eliminated any possibility of mercy. She hadn't been an innocent victim of manipulation. She'd been a willing participant in her daughter's abuse for personal benefit. Chuck Logan's final mistake was underestimating the speed and efficiency of Marcus's operation. His assumption that military families were vulnerable targets had been based on soldiers being distant and unable to respond quickly to threats. He'd never encountered a special forces operator who brought the war home. Marcus's preparation for the final phase included establishing multiple extraction routes for Emma and ensuring that all evidence of Chuck's network would be preserved for federal prosecutors. The predators would be eliminated permanently, but their victims would have justice through the legal system. Chapter 6: Predators and Prey. Chuck Logan's escalating paranoia following Nicholas's death revealed the fundamental cowardice beneath his predatory facade. Years of intimidating vulnerable women and children had not prepared him for facing a genuine threat, and his psychological deterioration was rapid and complete. Salvatore Barber's team arrived in Cedar Falls to find their target environment completely compromised. Their standard operating procedures relied on controlling information and eliminating witnesses systematically. But Marcus's operation had anticipated their methods and prepared countermeasures. This isn't random, Barber reported to Chuck during their emergency meeting. Someone with professional capabilities is dismantling your operation piece by piece. We need to abort and disappear immediately. Chuck's refusal to abandon his established territory demonstrated the territorial instincts that had made him successful for years, but also made him vulnerable to elimination. His attachment to his properties and accumulated power blinded him to the reality that he was now the prey rather than the predator. Clyde Powell's infiltration of Barber's communication systems provided Marcus with detailed intelligence about their disposal methods and planned timeline. The revelation that Barber's team had killed at least 17 people over the past 5 years confirmed that this was a war against a sophisticated criminal organization that required complete elimination. Mercedes' attempt to negotiate for mercy by offering to testify against Chuck revealed her complete failure to understand the nature of her situation. Her willingness to betray Chuck after months of betraying Marcus demonstrated the fundamental selfishness that had led to Emma's endangerment. I'll tell them everything, Mercedes promised during her call to federal investigator Austin Hicks. Chuck forced me to cooperate, and I never wanted any of this to happen to Emma. Austin's response was professionally neutral, but Marcus's parallel conversation made the reality clear. Your wife's cooperation is valuable for prosecuting Chuck's network, but it doesn't change her criminal liability. She knowingly participated in child exploitation for personal benefit. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation against Chuck Logan intensified with the delivery of recordings of Chuck's own conversations discussing the elimination of witnesses and the exploitation of children. The recordings were edited to suggest that Nicholas had been secretly recording Chuck for weeks before his death. Chuck's discovery that Nicholas had allegedly been documenting their conversations created a cascade of paranoid responses. His frantic attempts to locate and destroy potential evidence led him to make increasingly desperate decisions that further exposed his operation to surveillance and documentation. Todd Aldrich's preparation for eliminating Salvatore Barber's team required more sophisticated techniques than the simple accident that had eliminated Nicholas. Barber's men were professionals with military or law enforcement backgrounds who would be suspicious of obvious traps. The solution involved exploiting Barber's team's reliance on electronic communication and their assumption that they controlled the local information environment. Marcus's team fed them false intelligence about police response times and federal surveillance capabilities, leading them to establish their operation base in a location that could be completely isolated and controlled. Emma's psychological evaluation by military mental health professionals revealed the full extent of the trauma Chuck's surveillance and threats had caused. Her descriptions of being constantly watched and her fear that the scary man would hurt her family provided additional motivation for Marcus's determination to eliminate the threat permanently. The child shows classic symptoms of sustained psychological abuse, the therapist reported to Marcus. She's developed hypervigilance and dissociative responses consistent with prolonged predatory stalking. Recovery will require years of therapy and absolute assurance that the threat has been eliminated. Marcus's communication with Colonel Wilson confirmed that Emma's condition justified any level of response necessary to protect her and prevent similar abuse of other military families. Use whatever methods you deem appropriate. The protection of our families justifies extreme measures. Chuck Logan's final desperate gambit involved attempting to eliminate all evidence of his operation by burning down his properties and killing any remaining witnesses. His plan to stage a gas explosion that would destroy multiple houses in the neighborhood demonstrated his complete willingness to commit mass murder to protect himself. The plan's scope included killing Cassie Fuentes and two other neighbors who had witnessed his activities, eliminating Mercedes to prevent her testimony, and making the entire situation appear to be an accidental gas leak explosion that had consumed multiple homes. Marcus's interception of Chuck's communication with a corrupt gas company employee revealed the timeline and method for the planned explosion. The revelation that Chuck was willing to kill innocent families to cover his crimes eliminated any moral constraints on Marcus's response. Barber's team began implementing their own elimination protocol simultaneously, creating a convergence of multiple criminal operations that required immediate and decisive action. Marcus's years of experience in multi-target environments made him uniquely qualified to handle the complex tactical situation. The final phase of the operation would require eliminating both Chuck's local operation and Barber's disposal team, while preserving evidence for federal prosecution of their broader network. Marcus's reputation for handling impossible tactical situations would be tested against multiple professional adversaries operating on familiar territory. Chuck Logan had spent years believing that predators like himself were the apex of the food chain, capable of destroying anyone who threatened their operations. He was about to learn that some soldiers brought skills home that made them far more dangerous than any predator who relied on intimidation and institutional cover. Chapter 7. The Convergence. The tactical situation that developed on the evening of Marcus's final operation required the kind of complex multi-target coordination that had made him legendary in Special Forces circles. Chuck Logan's planned gas explosion was scheduled for midnight, while Salvatore Barber's team intended to eliminate all witnesses starting at 11 p.m. Marcus's team had 6 hours to neutralize both threats while ensuring Emma's safety and preserving evidence of the criminal network for federal prosecution. The operation required precision timing and the willingness to eliminate multiple targets simultaneously without leaving evidence of military involvement. Clyde Powell's control of the electronic environment gave Marcus unprecedented tactical advantage. Every communication between Chuck and Barber was monitored, their planned routes were tracked, and their weapons and equipment capabilities were documented in real time. Barber's team is moving into position, Clyde reported from their command center. 3 vehicles, 8 personnel, military-grade weapons, and surveillance equipment. They're professionals, but they're operating in territory we control. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation reached its culmination with Chuck Logan's complete mental breakdown. The final trigger was a call from someone claiming to be Nicholas Mueller, allegedly speaking from federal protective custody and describing Chuck's planned elimination. "Chuck, they know everything," the voice said, using recordings of Nicholas's actual speech patterns that Wallace had synthesized. "They've got recordings, financial records, everything. Barber's not coming to help you. He's coming to eliminate you as a liability." Chuck's response was exactly what Wallace had predicted. Complete paranoid collapse followed by desperate attempts to contact Barber and confirm his suspicions. The resulting communications revealed the full scope of their elimination plan and provided additional evidence of their criminal conspiracy. Todd Aldrich's placement of monitoring devices throughout Chuck's properties allowed Marcus to track his movements and preparations in real time. Chuck's amateur attempts to booby-trap his own house and establish defensive positions revealed his complete lack of professional training or tactical competence. Mercedes's final call to Marcus was a desperate attempt to negotiate for Emma's future well-being. Her complete understanding that she would face federal prosecution had shifted her focus to ensuring their daughter would be protected from the consequences of her mother's betrayals. "Please don't let Emma hate me," Mercedes pleaded. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but she's innocent in all this. Promise me you'll make sure she has a good life." Marcus's response reflected his military training in handling casualties and collateral damage. "Emma will be protected and provided for. Her future won't be destroyed by your choices. But you'll never see her again. That's the cost of betraying your family." Cassie Fuentes' evacuation of vulnerable neighbors proceeded under the cover of a staged gas leak warning that provided legitimate reason for residents to leave the area. Her nursing credentials gave her credibility with local authorities, and her genuine concern for community safety made her warnings effective. The evacuation was completed 30 minutes before Barber's team reached their planned positions, eliminating the possibility of civilian casualties while preserving the appearance of normal neighborhood activity. Austin Hicks positioned his federal task force to respond to the situation as it developed, but with strict instructions to allow Marcus's team to handle the immediate tactical situation. Federal law enforcement would handle prosecution and evidence preservation, but the elimination of immediate threats required capabilities that existed outside legal constraints. Chuck Logan's final preparation involved recording a video confession that was intended to serve as insurance against betrayal by his criminal associates. The recording detailed his entire operation, named his victims, and described the methods used to control and exploit military families. Chuck's assumption that the recording would protect him demonstrated his fundamental misunderstanding of his situation. He still believed he was operating within a criminal justice system where evidence and legal procedures mattered, not realizing he was facing military justice administered by someone who viewed him as an enemy combatant threatening American families. Barber's team's approach to the neighborhood was professionally executed but relied on assumptions about local control that were no longer accurate. Their electronic surveillance detected no federal presence. Their communications appeared secure, and their intelligence suggested they faced only local law enforcement capabilities. Marcus's team allowed Barber's personnel to establish their positions while monitoring their every movement and communication. The tactical advantage of knowing enemy positions and intentions while remaining undetected made the subsequent elimination protocol straightforward and efficient. The convergence began at 10:47 p.m. when Chuck Logan attempted to activate his gas explosion device and discovered that Todd Aldrich had replaced his amateur bomb with a sophisticated device that would eliminate Chuck while leaving the rest of the neighborhood unharmed. Barber's team moved to their final positions exactly as Marcus had predicted, making them vulnerable to simultaneous elimination by Todd's strategically placed charges. Years of making high-value targets disappear had prepared Marcus's team for exactly this kind of complex tactical situation. Chuck Logan's last moments were spent in the terrified realization that he had been outmaneuvered by someone far more professional and deadly than anyone he had ever encountered. His years of preying on vulnerable families had not prepared him for facing a soldier who brought military skills to the protection of innocent children. Chapter 8. Elimination Protocol. The final phase of Marcus's operation began at precisely 10:52 p.m. when Chuck Logan triggered the device he believed would destroy the neighborhood and eliminate all evidence of his crimes. Instead, Todd Aldrich's sophisticated explosive eliminated only Chuck, while leaving forensic evidence that would appear to investigators as an accidental gas explosion caused by Chuck's own criminally negligent modifications to the gas system. Chuck's death was instantaneous, but preceded by the terrifying realization that his apparent control over the situation had been an illusion. His final seconds were spent understanding that he had been systematically outmaneuvered by someone who possessed far greater tactical capabilities than his limited criminal experience could comprehend. Salvatore Barber's team realized their operation had been compromised when Chuck's explosion occurred 30 minutes ahead of their planned timeline, and in a manner that suggested professional intervention. Their attempt to abort the mission and withdraw from the area triggered the final phase of Marcus's elimination protocol. Todd Aldrich's strategic placement of explosive devices throughout Barber's planned escape routes ensured that none of his team would survive to threaten other families or reestablish their criminal network. Each elimination was staged to appear accidental. Vehicle crashes, structural collapses, and equipment malfunctions that would pass routine investigation. All targets eliminated. Todd reported to Marcus as the last of Barber's personnel was eliminated. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence of our involvement. Local authorities will find what appears to be a criminal operation that destroyed itself through incompetence and paranoia. Clyde Powell's systematic destruction of Chuck's surveillance network included preserving all evidence of his crimes while eliminating any traces of Marcus's team's involvement. Federal investigators would find thousands of hours of exploitation footage and detailed financial records without any indication that military personnel had been involved in the investigation. Wallace Sweeney's psychological operation reached its conclusion with the revelation that Nicholas Mueller's death had been staged to appear accidental, but had actually been the first step in the systematic elimination of Chuck's entire network. The psychological pressure that had driven Chuck to his final desperate act had been carefully orchestrated to ensure he would destroy himself and his operation. Mercedes's arrest by federal agents occurred simultaneously with the elimination of Chuck's operation, ensuring she would face prosecution for her role in Emma's exploitation while being protected from any potential retaliation by Chuck's criminal associates. Her final conversation with Emma was monitored by child welfare professionals who documented Mercedes's complete acknowledgement of her guilt and her understanding that she would never see her daughter again. "Mommy made terrible choices that hurt you," Mercedes told Emma through tears. "Your daddy loves you more than anything, and he'll take care of you. I'm sorry for everything." Emma's response revealed the psychological damage caused by months of living under Chuck's surveillance and threats. Will the scary man come back? Will there be more scary men? Marcus's answer provided the absolute assurance Emma needed. "There will never be another scary man, sweetheart. Daddy made sure of that. You're safe forever now." Austin Hicks's federal investigation of Chuck's network revealed connections to similar operations in 17 states, involving over 200 military families who had been targeted by organized predators. The evidence preserved by Marcus's team would enable prosecution of the entire network and protection for all identified victims. "This is the most comprehensive elimination of a predatory network we've ever documented," Austin reported to his superiors. Someone with extraordinary capabilities dismantled their entire operation and eliminated the leadership, while preserving perfect evidence for prosecution. Colonel Wilson's debriefing with Marcus confirmed that the operation had achieved all objectives while maintaining complete deniability from military involvement. Officially, this never happened. Unofficially, you've protected hundreds of military families from predators who thought themselves untouchable. Marcus's transition back to civilian life included establishing a new identity and location for himself and Emma, far from any potential retaliation by remnants of Chuck's network. His military service record was classified, and his new life would be protected by the same agencies that had supported his elimination operation. Emma's psychological recovery began immediately with intensive therapy designed to help children who had been exploited by predators. Her resilience and the absolute security of knowing the threat had been permanently eliminated would enable her to heal and develop normally. Cassie Fuentes received recognition from federal authorities for her role in protecting neighborhood children and assisting in the investigation of Chuck's operation. Her courage in standing up to predators made her a model for other civilians who might encounter similar threats to their communities. Mercedes's federal prosecution resulted in a 20-year sentence for conspiracy to exploit children and facilitate predatory crimes against military families. Her cooperation with investigators reduced her sentence, but did not alter the fundamental reality that she had betrayed her own daughter for personal benefit. The criminal network that had preyed on military families for years was completely eliminated through a combination of Marcus's direct action and federal prosecution of surviving associates. The message sent to other potential predators was clear. Military families were protected by soldiers who would bring any level of force necessary to eliminate threats to innocent children. Chapter 9. New Foundations. 6 months after the elimination of Chuck Logan's network, Marcus and Emma had established their new life in a small mountain town where Emma's nightmares gradually faded and her natural resilience began to reassert itself. The house Marcus purchased sat on 20 acres of private land, ensuring their security and providing Emma with the space she needed to heal from her trauma. Emma's therapy sessions revealed the full extent of Chuck's psychological abuse, but also demonstrated her remarkable strength and her complete trust in her father's ability to protect her. Her progress was monitored by Dr. Beverly Cohen, a specialist in treating children who had been exploited by predators. "She's making excellent progress," Dr. Cohen reported to Marcus. "The absolute security of knowing the threat has been permanently eliminated is crucial for her recovery. Most children in similar situations never receive that kind of closure." Marcus's new identity as a security consultant allowed him to use his military skills in legitimate business while maintaining the flexibility to respond to any future threats. His reputation in certain circles as someone capable of handling impossible problems brought him clients who needed protection from threats that conventional law enforcement couldn't address. The financial settlement for Mercedes's conviction and the seizure of Chuck's assets provided Emma with a substantial trust fund that would ensure her educational and therapeutic needs were met throughout her life. Marcus had structured the fund to exclude any possibility of Mercedes accessing the money, even after her eventual release from prison. Emma's first day at her new school marked a significant milestone in her recovery. Her ability to interact normally with other children and her growing confidence in new situations demonstrated that the damage caused by Chuck's surveillance and threats was being successfully addressed through therapy and Marcus's unwavering protection. "Will we always live here, Daddy?" Emma asked as Marcus walked her to school. "As long as you want to, sweetheart," Marcus replied. "This is our home now, and no one will ever make us leave or threaten our family again." Mercedes's attempts to contact Emma through letters were intercepted by federal authorities and child welfare officials who determined that any communication from Mercedes would be harmful to Emma's recovery. The letters revealed Mercedes's continued self-pity and attempts to minimize her responsibility for Emma's trauma. Marcus's response to these attempts was characteristically direct. Mercedes had forfeited any right to contact Emma when she chose to endanger their daughter for personal benefit. The complete severing of that relationship was necessary for Emma's psychological health and future security. Austin Hicks's broader investigation revealed that Chuck's network had been one of several similar operations targeting military families across the United States. The evidence preserved during Marcus's operation enabled federal prosecution of over 50 predators and protection for more than 300 children who had been exploited. Your operation eliminated the most sophisticated and dangerous network we've ever encountered, Austin reported during his final briefing with Marcus. The methods you used to document their crimes while eliminating the perpetrators will become the model for future operations against similar threats. Colonel Wilson's official commendation for Marcus's service included recognition that would never appear in public records, but acknowledged his unique contribution to protecting military families. Your actions eliminated a threat that conventional law enforcement could not address and protected hundreds of innocent children from predators who thought themselves beyond retribution. Marcus's integration into civilian life included establishing relationships with neighbors and community members who appreciated his quiet competence and obvious devotion to Emma. His reputation as someone not to be crossed spread naturally through the small town, ensuring that Emma would grow up in an environment where everyone understood she was under powerful protection. The anniversary of Chuck Logan's death passed without official recognition, but Marcus privately acknowledged the date as the moment when Emma's safety had been permanently secured. The elimination of Chuck's network had required skills and methods that existed outside legal boundaries, but the protection of innocent children justified any level of response. Emma's 7th birthday celebration included friends from her new school and neighbors who had become part of their extended family. Her laughter and obvious happiness demonstrated that children could recover from even severe trauma when they received proper care and absolute security. Marcus's reflection on the operation's aftermath confirmed that his choice to eliminate Chuck and his associates rather than rely on conventional prosecution had been correct. Predators who targeted children required permanent solutions, and the legal system's limitations made military justice the only effective response. Well, Baldwin's visit for Emma's birthday brought news from their old life. The neighborhood in Cedar Falls had recovered from the trauma of Chuck's operation, property values had stabilized, and the community had implemented new safety measures to protect children from similar threats. People still talk about what happened, Will reported. The official story is that Chuck's criminal operation destroyed itself, but everyone understands that someone with serious capabilities eliminated a threat that was beyond local law enforcement. Marcus's satisfaction with the operation's outcome was tempered by the knowledge that other predators continued to threaten military families across the country. His new life included monitoring intelligence networks and maintaining readiness to respond to similar threats when conventional law enforcement proved inadequate. Emma's bedtime conversation that night included her traditional question about safety and Marcus's traditional response that provided absolute assurance. "Daddy, will any more scary men ever try to hurt us?" "No, sweetheart," Marcus replied, meaning every word. "Daddy made sure there will never be any more scary men. You're safe forever, and no one will ever threaten our family again." The foundation of their new life was built on Marcus's absolute commitment to Emma's safety and his demonstrated willingness to eliminate any threat to her well-being using whatever methods proved necessary. The man who had spent his military career protecting innocent people from predators had successfully transitioned those skills to protecting his own family. Chuck Logan and his network had learned too late that some soldiers brought the war home with them, and that predators who targeted military families faced retaliation from warriors who viewed the protection of children as a sacred duty, requiring any level of force necessary to ensure success. Emma fell asleep secure in the knowledge that her father's love and protection were absolute and permanent. Marcus maintained his vigil, ready to respond to any future threat with the same decisive action that had eliminated Chuck Logan and ensured that his daughter would grow up safe from predators who thought themselves beyond retribution. The end of one threat marked the beginning of a new life founded on the principle that innocent children deserve protection from warriors who possess the skills and will to eliminate anyone who would harm them. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Shadows in Paradise. Russell Wyatt had always been a private man. At 43, his salt and pepper hair and broad shoulders gave him an imposing presence that commanded respect without him having to say a word. The quiet neighborhood in Westlake, Arizona knew him as the successful security consultant who kept to himself, occasionally hosting barbecues that the whole street looked forward to attending. What the neighborhood didn't know was that Russell's mundane facade concealed a former Special Forces operator who spent 15 years in classified operations before transitioning to civilian life. The transition hadn't been entirely complete. Russell maintained connections with his former teammates, many of whom now occupied positions throughout federal law enforcement, intelligence services, and the private sector. Russell met Brooke Anderson at a fundraiser 6 years ago. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with auburn hair that caught the light like burnished copper and a laugh that could brighten the darkest room. Back then, he'd been impressed by her apparent dedication to the children's charity she represented. Within 8 months, they were married. Another late meeting? Russell asked, watching Brooke apply lipstick at the vanity. Tonight marked the third emergency client meeting this week. You know how it is during tax season, Brooke said, carefully avoiding eye contact through the mirror. Palmer needs all hands on deck. The Reynolds account is a mess. Russell nodded, saying nothing about the fact that tax season had ended 2 months ago, or that her accounting firm's senior partner Gerald Palmer had been on vacation in the Caymans for the past week, according to his very public Instagram posts. Instead, he kissed her cheek and told her not to work too hard. As Brooke's car pulled away, Russell opened his laptop, checking the GPS tracker he'd installed under her car 3 weeks ago when his instincts first started screaming that something was wrong. The movement matched exactly what he'd seen for the past several Thursdays, not toward downtown where her firm was located, but toward Scottsdale, specifically the Palmyra luxury condos. Russell closed the laptop, his face betraying nothing. He'd spent too many years behind enemy lines to let emotions cloud his judgment. He walked to his study, unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, and removed a burner phone. He dialed a number from memory. Leo? It's Russell. I need that favor now. Leo Thompson had been Russell's communications specialist during their deployment in Syria. Now he worked for a major credit bureau. Give me 24 hours, Leo replied. Russell gazed at the wedding photo on his desk. Brooke's smile, once magical to him, now seemed calculated. He placed a frame face down and began a plan. Chapter 2. Paper Trails. The next evening, Russell sat alone in his home office, methodically reviewing the documents Leo had sent. Brooke's financial life was laid bare before him, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Credit cards he'd never known about, loans taken against their home equity, a second mortgage on the vacation property in Sedona. All told, Brooke had accumulated nearly $380,000 in debt behind his back. The spending pattern was erratic at first, but had increased dramatically over the past 18 months. Russell accessed their joint bank account online. What should have been a comfortable savings had been systematically drained, with transfers to an account he didn't recognize. The withdrawals always came the day after his consulting firm's direct deposits. A text message alert interrupted his investigation. It was from Miguel Delgado, another former teammate who now worked for the Arizona Department of Public Safety. The message contained a single address in Scottsdale and 2 words, Unit 507. Russell changed into a black polo and slacks, items that wouldn't stand out, but also wouldn't be easily remembered. He drove to the Palmyra, an exclusive high-rise with views of Camelback Mountain. The security desk was unmanned when he arrived, a stroke of luck he hadn't counted on. He took the elevator to the 5th floor. Outside Unit 507, Russell paused, listening. Brooke's distinctive laugh filtered through the door, followed by a male voice he didn't recognize. He pulled out his phone and activated a recording app, then pressed it against the door. I can't keep coming up with excuses forever, Alec, Brooke was saying. We need to move our timeline up. Baby, these things take time, the male voice, Alec replied. The properties in Costa Rica aren't ready yet, and we need his signature on those papers before we can access the rest. He's getting suspicious. I caught him looking at the bank statements yesterday. Then distract him. You know how to do that. Alec's voice dropped lower, seductive. Just like you're going to distract me right now. Russell had heard enough. He quietly left the building, his mind cataloging every word, every implication. As he drove home, he made another call. Dennis, it's Russell. I need everything you can find on an Alec living at the Palmyra, Unit 507. Dennis Harper had been their intelligence officer. Now he worked as a private investigator with a reputation for thoroughness and discretion. Consider done, Dennis replied. And Russell, whatever this is about, be careful. You've always had a tendency to go dark when things get personal. I'll be fine, Russell said, ending the call. At home, he unlocked his gun safe and removed his Glock 19, checking it methodically before returning it to the safe. Not yet, he thought. First, he needed the full picture. As he closed the safe, he heard Brooke's car in the driveway. Russell composed himself, erasing any trace of what he now knew from his expression. He'd spent years interrogating enemy combatants. He could certainly handle an evening with a lying spouse. How was your day? He asked as she entered, smiling with practiced ease. Exhausting, Brooke sighed dramatically. You wouldn't believe the mess with the Anderson portfolio. I'm just glad it's Friday. Russell nodded sympathetically, noting the slight smudge of her lipstick, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne. I was thinking, he said, we should look at refinancing the Sedona property. Interest rates are down. He watched carefully as panic flashed in her eyes before she controlled it. Oh, well, let's talk about it next week. I'm too tired to think about finances tonight. Of course, Russell agreed, knowing that by next week, everything would be different. Take your time. Chapter 3, The Unraveling. Tuesday morning, Russell sat across from Harvey Maxwell, his attorney for the past decade. The older man's office overlooked downtown Phoenix, the desert sun casting harsh light across the conference table where Dennis Harper's comprehensive report lay open. Alexander Alec Reeves, Harvey read aloud. 41. Former investment banker who lost his license after a securities fraud investigation 3 years ago. No convictions, but paid a substantial settlement. Currently working as a financial consultant for cash-only clients. A con man, Russell said flatly. Essentially, Harvey agreed. And according to these bank records, your wife has transferred just over $420,000 to accounts associated with him in the past year alone. Russell's jaw tightened. And the properties in Costa Rica? Dennis cleared his throat. 3 beachfront lots purchased 6 months ago through a shell company. The paperwork lists both Reeves and Brooke as beneficial owners. They've been developing vacation villas with plans to sell to wealthy Americans looking for tax havens. Using my money, Russell said. Yes, Dennis confirmed. And based on the documentation I found in their cloud storage, they're planning to have you sign papers to access your investment portfolio. Once they have that, they disappear, Russell finished. Harvey adjusted his glasses. Russell, with this evidence, we can file for divorce immediately. Cite fraud, infidelity. No, Russell cut him off. A divorce means she gets half of everything despite the fraud. That's not acceptable. What exactly are you planning? Harvey asked cautiously. Russell stood, walking to the window. I'm going to confront her tomorrow. I need you both to be ready. Dennis, I want surveillance on Reeves. Harvey, prepare the documents we discussed. Both men exchanged concerned glances. Russell, Harvey said, whatever you're planning, remember there are legal ways to handle this. Russell turned, his expression unreadable. I spent 15 years operating in places where the law couldn't protect me. Harvey, I learned to create my own justice. He checked his watch. I'll call you both tomorrow evening. As Russell left the office, his phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. Need to discuss something important tonight. Making your favorite dinner. Perfect timing, he thought. She was making her move. That evening, Russell arrived home to find Brooke in the kitchen, a bottle of his favorite bourbon open on the counter. The dining room table was set with their best china, candles already lit. This looks special, he commented, accepting the glass she handed him. I've been neglecting us lately, Brooke said, her fingers lingering on his as she passed the drink. Work has been so demanding. I thought we deserved a nice evening together. Throughout dinner, Brooke was attentive, laughing at his stories, touching his hand frequently. When they moved to the living room with their drinks, she sat closer than she had in months. I've been thinking, she said, curling against him on the sofa. We should take that trip to Europe you've been wanting. Maybe in the fall. Russell smiled. That sounds wonderful, but we might need to look at our finances first. I was reviewing our accounts earlier. He felt her stiffen slightly before she relaxed again. Actually, that's something I wanted to discuss, she said. I've been talking to this brilliant financial advisor about some investment opportunities. Very exclusive deals. Oh, Russell kept his voice neutral. Yes, he's helped several of my colleagues. He has these amazing international properties. She stopped when Russell's phone rang. He checked the display. Sorry, I need to take this. It's a client emergency. He stepped into his office, closing the door. It was Dennis. Reeves just booked 2 one-way tickets to San Jose, Costa Rica, for Friday morning, he reported, under the names Alexander and Brooke Wilson. Thank you, Russell said calmly. Keep monitoring. When Russell returned to the living room, Brooke was on her phone, texting rapidly. She quickly put it away when she saw him. Everything okay? She asked with practiced concern. Just a minor issue with the client's security system, he lied smoothly. Now, you were telling me about these investment opportunities? Brooke launched into a carefully rehearsed pitch about exclusive real estate developments, never mentioning Reeves by name or Costa Rica specifically. As she spoke, Russell noticed how she'd positioned the documents on the coffee table, how she'd already opened the bourbon before he arrived. It does require some paperwork, she said finally, reaching for the folder. Just routine authorization forms. We should actually go over these tonight, if possible. Russell took the papers, pretending to review them. They were cleverly disguised power of attorney documents that would give her full access to his investment accounts. He set the papers down and looked directly into her eyes. This is very thorough, he said. Let me sleep on it, and we can sign everything tomorrow. I'd like to review them when I'm not half a Bourbon, Indiana. Disappointment flickered across her face before she recovered. Of course, no rush. I just thought you'd be excited about the opportunity. Oh, I am, Russell assured her, his smile not reaching his eyes. I think tomorrow will bring all sorts of revelations. Chapter 4. The Confrontation. Russell arrived home early the next day, having spent the morning finalizing his preparations. He'd confirmed that Brooke had taken a day off work, ostensibly for a dental appointment, but her car had been tracked to the Palmyra again. She returned home just after 3, carrying shopping bags from luxury boutiques. Russell, she exclaimed, clearly startled to find him sitting in the living room. I thought you'd be at work until 6. Change of plans, he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. We need to talk, Brooke. She hesitated, then set her bags down. Is everything okay? That depends on your perspective, Russell said, his voice unervingly calm. I've been doing some financial planning of my own. Did you know that second mortgages leave quite the paper trail? All color drained from Brooke's face. She opened her mouth to speak, but Russell continued. I especially found the timing interesting. Our Sedona property was remortgaged the same week 3 beachfront lots were purchased in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. He leaned forward. What a coincidence. Russell, I can explain. I'm sure you can, he interrupted. Just like you can explain the $420,000 you've transferred to Alec Reeves in the past year, or the one-way tickets to Costa Rica for Friday morning. Brooke's shock was genuine. How did you? Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Russell's voice remained level, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted. Did you think the skills that kept me alive behind enemy lines for 15 years wouldn't translate to detecting a basic con job? Brooke's expression shifted, calculation replacing fear. This is insane. You've been spying on me? Tracking me? That's illegal. So is fraud, Russell countered. So is theft. So is forging your spouse's signature on loan documents. Her strategy changed instantly. Tears welled in her eyes as she moved to kneel beside his chair. Russell, please. Alec manipulated me. He threatened me. I was scared to tell you. Russell looked down at her, unmoved by the performance. You're good, Brooke. Very good. But I've interrogated people who truly feared for their lives. Your performance lacks authenticity. She stood abruptly, tears vanishing. Fine. You caught me. What now? Half of everything is still legally mine. We'll divorce. I'll get my settlement, and you'll never see me again. That would be the conventional approach, Russell agreed. But I'm not feeling particularly conventional today. Something in his tone made her take a step back. What does that mean? Russell stood, closing the distance between them. It means I want everything returned, my money, my properties, all of it. You and Reeves will sign the documents my attorney has prepared, transferring everything back to me. In exchange, I won't press charges. Brooke laughed bitterly. You're delusional. I'm not signing anything. In fact, she reached for her phone. I'm calling the police right now. I don't feel safe with you. Russell didn't try to stop her. Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in all the evidence I compiled. The fraud investigation alone will take years to untangle. Her finger hovered over the screen. Then her expression changed, a cold calculation entering her eyes. You're right. Let's be civilized. I'll have Alec bring the Costa Rica paperwork. We'll sign everything over, and you'll never hear from us again. Russell smiled thinly. I thought you might see a reason. Have him come over tonight. Brooke nodded, already texting. After a moment, she looked up. He'll be here at 8. Perfect. I'll open some wine. The next 4 hours passed in a grotesque parody of domestic normalcy. Brooke retreated to the guest bedroom to freshen up, which Russell knew meant she was coordinating with Reeves. He used the time to activate the recording devices he'd placed throughout the house and alert Dennis and Harvey that the plan was in motion. At precisely 8, the doorbell rang. Russell opened it to find a tanned, expensively dressed man with artificially whitened teeth and carefully styled hair. Mr. Wyatt, Alec Reeves extended his hand. A pleasure to finally meet you. Russell shook it firmly. Likewise, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Brooke appeared behind Russell, her entire demeanor transformed. The terrified woman from hours earlier was gone, replaced by someone coolly professional. Let's get this over with, she said. In the dining room, Russell poured wine while Reeves laid out documents. These transfer the Costa Rica properties back to you exclusively, Reeves explained smoothly. And these terminate any claims Brooke might have on your financial accounts. Very thorough, Russell observed, scanning the papers. But there's something missing. What's that? Reeves asked, confidence unwavering. Restitution, Russell replied. The $420,000 Brooke transferred to you. I want it back. Reeves laughed lightly. That money's gone, Mr. Wyatt. Investments, development costs. You understand how business works. Russell's gaze hardened. I understand exactly how your particular business works, Mr. Reeves. Securities fraud, investment scams, targeting wealthy divorcees, until you hit the jackpot with my wife. Reeves's smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Russell pulled out his phone, playing a recording, Brooke and Reeves discussing how to get Russell's signature on the power of attorney documents. Brooke slammed her wine glass down. You recorded us? That's illegal. Arizona is a one-party consent state, Russell replied calmly. I was present during that conversation last night. This is ridiculous, Reeves stood. We're leaving. Good luck proving anything. Sit down, Russell said, his voice suddenly carrying the unmistakable tone of command. Something in his expression made Reeves comply instantly. You have two options. Sign my documents returning everything and transferring $420,000 to my account, or I send all my evidence to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, the Arizona Attorney General, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Reeves glanced at Brooke, who had gone pale. You're bluffing, she said weakly. Russell pulled out a second phone and pressed a button. Dennis? Are you ready with the evidence packages? He paused. Good. If I don't call you within the hour, send them all. He set the phone on the table. 1 hour. Reeves's confidence had evaporated. I don't have $420,000 liquid. Most of it went into those properties. Then you have a problem, Russell replied. Because those are my terms. A tense silence filled the room. Suddenly, Brooke lunged for the sideboard drawer, yanking it open and pulling out a small revolver. One Russell kept hidden for home defense. "Enough," she shouted, aiming the gun at Russell. "Sign the original papers and give us access to your accounts. Or, I swear to God, I'll shoot you right here." Russell didn't move. "That gun isn't loaded, Brooke." "Bullshit," she snarled, finger tightening on the trigger. The hammer fell with a dull click on an empty chamber. Brooke's eyes widened. "I told you," Russell said quietly. "I've dealt with people who actually want to kill me. You think I'd leave a loaded gun where anyone could find it?" Before anyone could respond, Brooke swung the gun like a club, catching Russell on the temple. He staggered as she hit him again, drawing blood. Reeves grabbed a wine bottle, smashing it against the edge of the table and holding the jagged remains like a weapon. "New plan?" Brooke hissed, still clutching the gun. "We're leaving, and you're not going to follow us. Try anything, and I'll tell the police you attacked me. Who do you think they'll believe? The decorated businessman or the crazy ex-military with a history of violence?" Russell touched his bleeding temple, his expression dangerous. "You have no idea what you just done. Call the cops if you want," Reeves taunted, backing toward the door with Brooke. "It's your word against ours. And there are two of us." As they reached the front door, Brooke paused. "I never loved you, Russell. You were just a meal ticket, a boring, predictable bankroll." The doors slammed behind them, leaving Russell alone with blood trickling down his face. He calmly walked to the kitchen, pressing a towel to his wound as he picked up his phone. "Dennis? They're running. Execute Plan B." Chapter 5, The Arrest. 2 hours later, Russell sat in the stark brightness of an interrogation room at the Scottsdale Police Department. His head wound had been cleaned and bandaged by paramedics, but they'd refused his request to leave, insisting he needed to give a statement. Across the table, Detective Sandra Willis reviewed her notes with practiced neutrality. "Run me through it one more time, Mr. Wyatt. Your wife and her friend attacked you during a financial discussion." "That's correct," Russell replied calmly. "They wanted me to sign over power of attorney. When I refused, my wife struck me with an unloaded revolver, and Mr. Reeves threatened me with a broken wine bottle." "And why was the revolver unloaded?" "I keep it for home defense, but store the ammunition separately." Willis nodded, making notes. "Yet when officers responded to the domestic disturbance call, they found you alone in the house with evidence of an altercation, while your wife was at the Valley View Hospital emergency room with bruises to her face and claims that you assaulted her after discovering her affair." Russell's expression remained unchanged. "Detective, in my former career, I was trained to disable armed opponents without killing them. If I had wanted to harm my wife, she wouldn't have been able to drive herself to a hospital." Willis studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Reeves is supporting your wife's version of events. I'm not surprised." The detective closed her notebook. "Mr. Wyatt, I've been doing this job for 17 years. Domestic situations are rarely straightforward. But when a wife shows up with bruises and her husband has military training—" "You're going to charge me," Russell stated. "We're holding you for questioning in a domestic violence investigation," Willis corrected. "You'll be processed and given the opportunity to contact an attorney." Russell leaned forward. "I'd like to make my phone call now." 30 minutes later, Russell sat in a holding cell, his expression betraying nothing as officers processed other detainees around him. He had made exactly one call, not to Harvey Maxwell or any other attorney, but to a number few people knew existed. Near midnight, the station's night sergeant approached his cell. "Wyatt, you've got 5 minutes in interview room C." Russell was escorted to a small room where a uniformed police captain waited, her silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. Captain Teresa Valdez had been with the Scottsdale PD for nearly 3 decades and was known for her no-nonsense approach. "You've got friends in interesting places, Wyatt," she said without preamble. "I cultivated relationships in my previous career," Russell replied simply. "So I've been told." She slid a folder across the table. "Your wife's statement is full of inconsistencies. Her medical exam showed defensive bruising only, consistent with someone striking an object, not being struck. Mr. Reeves's statement contradicts hers on several key points." "Not surprising." Valdez leaned forward. "I received a call from Chief Richardson himself, followed by one from the Deputy Director of the FBI's Phoenix Field office. Both suggested I look very carefully at this case. And have you? We tracked your wife's movements using traffic cameras. She and Reeves stopped at the Palmyra before going to the hospital. Surveillance footage shows her entering without visible injuries and exiting 20 minutes later with the bruises she later claimed you inflicted. Russell said nothing. There's more, Valdez continued. A search of their condo found makeup specifically designed to create realistic-looking bruises, professional-grade stuff used in film production. We also found a whiskey bottle with your fingerprints on it, likely planted to support claims you were intoxicated. She closed the folder. Mr. Wyatt, I don't know what game is being played here, but it's clear you're not the aggressor. However, her expression hardened. I'm concerned about what happens next. The chief mentioned your specialized background. Captain, Russell said quietly, I appreciate your concern. But rest assured, everything that happens from this point forward will be completely legal. Valdez studied him for a long moment. We're releasing you without charges. Detective Willis will return your personal effects. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Whatever you're planning, remember that some kinds of justice leave permanent stains. Russell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Some stains are worth living with, Captain. An hour later, Russell walked out of the police station into the cool night air. A black SUV pulled up immediately, and the passenger door opened. Inside sat Chief of Police William Bull Richardson, Russell's former commanding officer from their Special Forces days. You look like hell, Russ, the chief commented as Russell climbed in. Appreciate the assist, Bull. 15 years in the shit together buys you one get-out-of-jail-free card, Richardson replied. Now tell me what the hell is going on. As the SUV pulled away, Russell explained everything. The affair, the financial fraud, the setup. Richardson listened without interruption. She's dangerous, the chief finally said. They both are. They'll try again, more carefully next time. I'm counting on it, Russell replied. Richardson glanced at his former teammate. What did you mean when you told Valdez everything would be completely legal? Russell looked out at the passing city lights. Just that whatever happens next, no laws will be broken. He paused. By me, at least. That's a fine distinction, Russ. It's the only one that matters. They drove in silence for several minutes before Richardson spoke again. The Palmyra is under surveillance. We're watching for your wife and Reeves to return. They won't, Russell said confidently. They'll be making emergency arrangements to leave the country. Their Costa Rica plans are compromised, so they'll choose a backup location, somewhere without extradition. Richardson raised an eyebrow. You seem very certain. I know how they think now, Russell replied. And I know exactly what they'll do next. Chapter 6. The Call. While Russell was being released from police custody, Brooke and Alec were frantically packing in a hotel room on the outskirts of Phoenix. We need to move fast, Alec said, shoving clothes into a suitcase. Once he gets out, he'll come after us. Brooke was scrolling through flights on her laptop. There's a 6 a.m. connection through Mexico City to Caracas. Venezuela has no extradition treaty with the U.S. Book it, Alec ordered. Use the backup cards I gave you, not your regular ones. Brooke nodded, fingers flying over the keyboard. What about the money? We can't access his accounts now. We've still got about $180,000 in the offshore account. It's not what we planned, but it's enough to start over. Alec paused. Unless what? Unless we get him to transfer the money under duress. Alec's expression turned calculating. We still have leverage. What leverage? He knows everything. Not everything. Alec pulled out his phone, showing her a screen with an account balance of just over $2.4 million. Remember when you added me as an authorized user on his investment account for estate planning purposes? He never removed me. Brooke's eyes widened. I forgot about that. We can transfer it all right now. Not from here, Alec cautioned. The IP address will be traceable. We need to use a public connection and a VPN. He checked his watch. There's a 24-hour cafe near the airport with free Wi-Fi. We'll do it there before our flight. As they finished packing, Brooke's burner phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Don't answer it, Alec warned. She checked the caller ID. It's the police station. Maybe they're still holding him. Against Alec's protests, she answered. Hello, Mrs. Wyatt? This is Captain Valdez with Scottsdale PD. I'm calling to inform you that your husband is being released without charges. Brooke forced her voice to remain steady. What? That's impossible. He attacked me. Our investigation found substantial evidence contradicting your statement, Valdez replied coldly. In fact, we have reason to believe you falsified your injuries and filed a false police report, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor in Arizona. That's ridiculous. I have bruises. I have a witness. We have surveillance footage, Mrs. Wyatt, from the Palmyra, showing you entering without injuries and exiting with them 20 minutes later. We also found a theatrical makeup in Mr. Reeves's condo. Brooke fell silent. We're issuing warrants for both you and Mr. Reeves, Valdez continued. I suggest you turn yourselves in immediately to avoid additional charges. The line went dead. Brooke turned to Alec, her face pale. They know. They have warrants. Alec cursed, grabbing the remaining bags. We need to move. Now, the airport cafe isn't safe. They'll be watching all the terminals. What about the money? We can't leave without it. Alec thought quickly. There's a truck stop with Wi-Fi off I-10. We'll stop there, make the transfer, then head to Nogales. We can cross into Mexico by car instead of flying. As they hurried to their rental car, neither noticed the unmarked police vehicle 3 spaces away, nor the surveillance camera above the hotel entrance capturing their every move. Inside the police department's mobile command center, Chief Richardson watched the live feed with Russell at his side. They took the bait, Richardson commented. Valdez played her part perfectly. Russell nodded. They'll avoid the airports now. He pulled up a map on the computer screen. There are 3 main routes to Nogales. Given their current location, they'll take I-10 to I-19. And the truck stop? Almost certainly the Flying J at exit 175. It's the last major stop before the junction. Richardson raised an eyebrow. You've thought of everything. Not everything, Russell replied. Just everything they might do. He checked his watch. They'll make their move within the hour. Can your people be in position by then? Richardson nodded to a technician, who immediately began relaying instructions over a secure channel. Already happening. But Russ, if they try to transfer your money, they won't succeed, Russell assured him. Harvey implemented the contingency protocols as soon as I was arrested. Any transaction over $1,000 requires 2-factor authentication through my personal phone, which they don't have. Russell confirmed. But they don't know that yet. At 2:17 a.m., Brooke and Alec pulled into the Flying J truck stop, parking away from the main building's security lights. Inside, they found a corner booth in the nearly empty cafe, opened a laptop, and connected to the Wi-Fi through a VPN. Quick, Brooke urged. Get in and out of the account in under 3 minutes. Alec nodded, logging into the investment portal using the credentials Brooke had provided months ago. The account loaded, showing the full balance of $2,437,869.22. It's all still there, he whispered triumphantly. He began setting up a transfer to their offshore account, fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. When he clicked submit, however, a new screen appeared. For your security, this transaction requires additional verification. A code has been sent to the phone number ending in 4277. Alec froze. Does he have 2-factor authentication? He must have added it recently, Brooke said, panic rising. We need that code. Alec thought furiously. Call his phone. Maybe we can trick him into giving us the code. Brooke dialed Russell's number, her heart pounding. To her surprise, he answered immediately. Hello, Brooke? Russell's voice was unervingly calm. I've been expecting your call. Russell, she forced herself to sound contrite. I'm so sorry about everything. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Stop, he cut her off. We both know exactly what this is about. You need the verification code for my investment account. Brooke was stunned into silence. Are you still at the Flying J truck stop? Russell continued conversationally. Table in the back corner, I'd imagine. Alec's probably wearing that ridiculous blue jacket he seems so fond of. Brooke's blood ran cold as she scanned the nearly empty restaurant. How do you? I know exactly where you are, what you're doing, and what you're planning next, Russell said. I've known from the beginning. Russell, please, she tried once more. We can work this out. Just give me the code, and we'll split the money. You'll never have to see me again. His laugh held no humor. You still don't understand, do you? This was never about the money. Then what? Consequences, Brooke. Actions have consequences. His voice hardened. Look out the window. Brooke turned to see police vehicles silently pulling into the parking lot, officers taking positions around the building. What have you done? She whispered. I haven't done anything, Russell replied. You did this. All of it. Every decision, every betrayal, every lie led you to this moment. They can't prove anything, she said desperately. It'll be your word against ours. Check your email. Confused, Brooke opened her email app to find a message from Russell sent just minutes ago. Attached were dozens of files, recordings of her conversations with Alec, bank statements showing the fraudulent transfers, evidence of the false police report, and most damning of all, a video from the Palmyra showing her applying the fake bruises in Alec's bathroom. How she breathed. I told you. Russell's voice was steel. I spent 15 years behind enemy lines. Did you really think I wouldn't notice an enemy in my own home? Through the window, Brooke could see officers approaching the restaurant entrance. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. Now. Russell paused. Now you face the consequences of underestimating exactly who you were dealing with. He ended the call as the police entered the restaurant. As Brooke and Alec were being handcuffed, Captain Valdez's phone rang. She stepped aside to answer it, then approached the pair. It seems your situation has gotten more complicated, she informed them. The FBI just took over your case. Apparently, Mr. Reeves's financial activities crossed state lines, making this a federal matter. As they were led out to separate vehicles, Brooke caught a glimpse of Russell standing in the shadows across the parking lot, watching impassively. Their eyes met for one brief moment. In that instant, she finally understood the magnitude of her mistake. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. 3 weeks after the arrests, Russell sat in a conference room at the FBI's Phoenix Field office. Across the table, Special Agent Laura Mercer closed a thick file. The case against them is airtight, she confirmed. Fraud, conspiracy, filing false police reports, attempted theft, they're looking at significant federal time. And the plea bargains? Russell asked. Reeves flipped immediately, Mercer replied. Typical for his type. He's offered testimony against your wife in exchange for reduced charges. He'll still serve at least 7 years. And Brooke? She's been less cooperative. Her attorney is still pushing for a deal, but the U.S. attorney isn't feeling generous. She's facing 12 to 15 years, plus restitution. Russell nodded, his expression unreadable. There is one complication, Mercer added. Your wife is requesting a meeting with you before she makes any decisions about a plea. She claims to have information you'd want to hear. What kind of information? She wouldn't say, just that it's personal and urgent. Russell considered this. Set up. 2 days later, Russell was escorted into a small meeting room at the detention center. Brooke sat at a metal table, the orange jumpsuit washing out her complexion, her once perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without her usual makeup and expensive clothes, she looked smaller somehow, diminished. You came, she said as Russell took the seat across from her. I was curious what you thought was important enough to request this meeting. Brooke glanced at the guard stationed by the door. Can we speak privately? Russell nodded to the guard, who stepped outside, though they both knew he would be watching through the observation window. I need you to drop the charges, Brooke said without preamble. Russell's eyebrows rose slightly. That's why you wanted to meet? To ask for leniency. You don't understand. She leaned forward urgently. I can't do 15 years, Russell. I just can't. You should have considered that before stealing from me and trying to have me arrested. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Russell's voice remained level, but his eyes hardened. You systematically drained our accounts, had an affair, planned to steal my entire investment portfolio, assaulted me, filed false police reports, and tried to destroy my reputation. Those aren't mistakes, Brooke. They're choices. She slumped back in her chair. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. I was greedy and stupid. An apology implies remorse, Russell observed. You're just sorry you got caught. Brooke's facade cracked then, tears welling in her eyes. Please, Russell. I'm begging you. If you ever love me at all, don't. He cut her off. Don't invoke what I felt for you. You destroyed that the moment you conspired with Reeves. They sat in silence for a long moment. There's something you should know, Brooke finally said, wiping her eyes. Something important. She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Russell's expression didn't change. No, you're not. Brooke blinked in surprise. What? Your medical screening, when you were processed, showed no pregnancy, Russell stated calmly. The results are in your file. They made a mistake. Brooke, Russell's voice held a note of finality. It's over. All of it. The lies, the manipulation, the games, they're finished. You have nothing left to bargain with. Her expression changed then, the vulnerable facade falling away to reveal cold hatred. You think you've won, don't you? The perfect Russell Wyatt, always in control, always 3 steps ahead. This isn't about winning. Bullshit, she spat. You're enjoying this. You orchestrated everything from the moment you suspected me. You set us up to fail. Russell leaned forward. I gave you multiple chances to walk away. All you had to do was return what you stole and disappear. Instead, you escalated. You tried to frame me for assault. Because I knew what you do. Men like you don't let things go. You hold grudges. You plot revenge. Men like me understand consequences. Russell corrected her. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Basic physics. Brooke's laugh was bitter. And now you get to be judge, jury, and executioner. Does it make you feel powerful, Russell? Watching me rot in prison while you rebuild your perfect life. This isn't about power, Russell replied, standing to leave. It's about justice. Justice? She sneered. This is revenge, pure and simple. Russell paused at the door. The difference between justice and revenge is that justice restores balance. Revenge just satisfies emotion. He looked at her one last time. And frankly, Brooke, you're not worth the emotion anymore. As he walked away, Brooke called after him. This isn't over, Russell. You'll regret this. I still have friends on the outside. Russell didn't look back. As the heavy door closed behind him, he nodded to the guard. We're done here. Outside the detention center, Dennis Harper waited by a black SUV. How did it go? He asked as Russell approached. Predictably, Russell replied. She tried everything. Pleas for sympathy, false pregnancy claims, and finally threats. Dennis frowned. Threats? Should we be concerned? No, Russell said confidently. She's grasping at straws. Still, Dennis looked troubled. People like Brooke sometimes have connections we don't know about. Maybe we should increase security at your house for a while. Russell considered this. Perhaps you're right. Set it up. He checked his watch. Now, I have another meeting to attend. Across town, in an upscale law office, Harvey Maxwell welcomed Russell with a firm handshake. Everything's prepared, the attorney said, leading him to a conference room where several documents awaited signature. The Costa Rica properties have been transferred back to your name, Harvey explained. The funds we could recover, approximately $210,000, have been returned to your accounts. The remaining amount may be recovered through restitution as part of the criminal proceedings. Russell signed where indicated. In the other matter, Harvey produced a separate folder. All arranged as you requested. The transfers will be initiated once you give final approval. Russell reviewed the documents carefully before signing. Immediate execution, Harvey. No delays. Of course. Harvey hesitated. Russell, are you certain about this? Once it's done, I'm certain, Russell replied firmly. It's the right thing to do. As he left the office, Russell's phone rang. Chief Richardson. We need to talk, the chief said without preamble. Meet me at O'Sullivan's in 30 minutes. The Irish pub was nearly empty when Russell arrived. Richardson sat in a back booth, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. What's wrong? Russell asked, sliding into the seat opposite. Richardson pushed a file across the table. Brooke made a call immediately after your visit. We monitored it as part of the federal case. Russell opened the file to find a transcript. The call had been to a burner phone. The recipient identified only as T. I need a favor, Brooke had said. You still owe me from Miami. It's time to collect. The response was brief. Name it. Russell Wyatt. I want him gone. Permanently. Russell closed the file. She's arranging a hit. Richardson nodded grimly. We don't know who this is, but the reference to Miami suggests someone with a criminal background. The feds are working to identify them, but burner phones make it difficult. Have they confronted Brooke? Not yet. They want to track T first, catch them both in a conspiracy. Russell considered this information. Let me see the case file for their investigation. Richardson looked uncomfortable. Russ, that's highly irregular. The FBI won't. Make it happen, Bull, Russell interrupted. I need to know who's coming for me. After a long moment, Richardson nodded. I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, watch your back. As Russell drove home that evening, he remained hyper-aware of his surroundings, checking regularly for tails or surveillance. When he arrived, he did a complete sweep of his property before entering the house. Inside, he went directly to his study, unlocking a hidden panel behind his bookshelf to reveal a small safe. From it, he removed his satellite phone and dialed a memorized number. It's Russell, he said when the call connected. I need to activate Protocol Chimera. The voice on the other end responded immediately. Authentication required. Sierra Echo 793 Tango. Authentication accepted. Chimera is live. Parameters? Russell provided the details. Names, locations, objectives. Timeline, the voice asked. Immediate, Russell replied. And I want confirmation when it's done. Understood. Chimera is proceeding. Russell ended the call, returned the phone to the safe, and closed the panel. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and waited. Chapter 8. The Trap. The next week passed quietly. Too quietly. Dennis had installed additional security at Russell's house. Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced doors, but there had been no suspicious activity. The FBI had made no progress identifying T and had finally confronted Brooke, who denied any knowledge of a hit and claimed she'd been just venting. Russell wasn't convinced. People like Brooke didn't make idle threats, especially not when facing 15 years in federal prison. Something was coming. He could feel it. On Thursday evening, as Russell worked in his study, his secure line rang. The display showed a blocked number. Wyatt, he answered. Chimera complete, said the voice from the satellite call. Package delivered. Confirmation awaits your review. Send it through standard channels, Russell replied before hanging up. Minutes later, his encrypted email pinged with a new message containing a video file. Russell watched it silently, his expression revealing nothing. When it ended, he deleted the file and cleared his browser history. His regular phone rang almost immediately. Chief Richardson. There's been a development, the chief said urgently. Alec Reeves was found dead in his cell an hour ago. Apparent suicide. Russell's response was measured. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate. Richardson's voice rose. Russ, he was a federal prisoner in protective custody. His death will trigger a major investigation. I'm sure it will, Russell agreed calmly. Was there a note? Richardson paused. Yes, actually. A full confession claiming Brooke masterminded everything and manipulated him into the scheme. Said he couldn't live with the guilt. The feds are verifying the handwriting now. Sounds like a man who finally faced his conscience. Russ, Richardson's voice dropped. Tell me you had nothing to do with this. I've been home all evening, Bull. You can check my security system. The chief was silent for a long moment. This feels too convenient. Sometimes justice works in unexpected ways, Russell replied. I'll talk to you tomorrow. The next morning brought news that Brooke had suffered a complete breakdown after learning of Reeves's death. She was now confessing to everything, including planning to have Russell killed. She named her contact, Thomas T-Bone Malone, a Miami-based enforcer with ties to organized crime, who owed her for providing an alibi in a previous case. By afternoon, the FBI had tracked Malone to a motel outside Phoenix, where they found him preparing surveillance equipment clearly intended for monitoring Russell's home. The arrest was clean, and Malone quickly offered to cooperate in exchange for leniency. Russell received the news from Special Agent Mercer herself, who visited his home to update him. You're very lucky, Mr. Wyatt, she said. If we hadn't caught Malone when we did. Indeed, Russell agreed. I'm grateful for the Bureau's diligence. Mercer studied him curiously. You don't seem particularly disturbed by the fact that your ex-wife tried to have you killed. Agent Mercer, When you've had people actively trying to kill you in war zones, the theoretical threat feels somewhat less immediate. She nodded slowly. Fair enough. Malone claims Brooke promised him $50,000 for the hit. We've been trying to determine where she would get that kind of money while incarcerated. I assume she still has contacts we don't know about, Russell suggested. Perhaps. Mercer agreed, though she sounded unconvinced. In any case, both Brooke and Malone are now facing additional charges. Between the original fraud case and this murder-for-hire plot, she'll likely never see freedom again. Justice served, Russell remarked. After Mercer left, Russell received a call from Harvey Maxwell. The final transfers are complete, Harvey reported. All funds have been distributed as requested. Thank you, Harvey. That concludes our business on this matter. Russell, the attorney said hesitantly, what you've done here, it's extraordinary. Most people in your position would have kept everything for themselves. I'm not most people, Harvey, and money has never been my primary motivation. That evening, Chief Richardson arrived unannounced at Russell's door, a bottle of 30-year-old scotch in hand. We need to talk, he said grimly. Inside, Richardson poured them each a generous measure before sitting heavily on the sofa. I've known you for 20 years, Russ. Served with you, bled with you. I've never asked questions about your methods because, frankly, I didn't want to know. Russell sipped his scotch, waiting. But this situation with Reeves, Richardson continued, it's bothering me. The timing, the convenient suicide note, Brooke's subsequent breakdown. It's all too clean. Sometimes things work out cleanly, Russell observed. Richardson set his glass down. Cut the bullshit. Did you arrange Reeves's death? Russell met his old friend's gaze steadily. No laws were broken by me, Bull. I promised you that from the beginning. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're going to get, Russell replied. Some questions are better left unasked. They sat in tense silence until Richardson spoke again. Chimera. That was your contingency protocol in Damascus, wasn't it? The one that eliminated the arms dealer without leaving any traceable evidence. Russell's expression remained neutral. That operation is still classified. God damn it, Russ. Richardson ran a hand over his face. I put my career on the line for you. If there's even a hint that you orchestrated a hit in federal custody, there won't be, Russell interrupted firmly, because nothing can be traced back to me. Nothing ever could. The chief studied his former teammate carefully. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? You knew Brooke would try to have you killed. I considered it a likely outcome, Russell admitted. People like Brooke don't accept defeat gracefully. And Reeves was a liability to everyone, including her. His remorse was convenient timing. Richardson drained his glass. The FBI is closing both cases, the fraud and the murder for hire. As far as they're concerned, justice has been served. Indeed it has. As Richardson prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Just tell me one thing. Are we finished with this now? No more surprises? No more bodies? Russell smiled thinly. I'm done with the past, Bull. From here, I only look forward. After the chief left, Russell returned to his study, opening his laptop to review an email from Dennis. Attached were surveillance photos of Thomas Malone meeting with a slender man at a cafe 3 days earlier, before Malone had come to Phoenix. The man's face was partially obscured, but Russell recognized him immediately. Right on schedule, he murmured, deleting the email. Everything had unfolded exactly as he'd planned from the moment he discovered Brooke's betrayal. The arrests, Reeves's demise, Brooke's breakdown, Malone's capture. All predictable moves in a game where Russell had controlled the board from the beginning. Justice, after all, was simply strategy executed perfectly. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 6 months later, Russell stood at the bow of his yacht, watching the Miami skyline recede as they moved into open water. The evening was perfect. Warm breeze, clear skies, the distant thrum of the city giving way to the rhythmic sound of waves against the hull. Beautiful evening, commented Dennis Harper, joining him with 2 glasses of champagne. Perfect for a celebration, Russell agreed, accepting a glass. To new beginnings, Dennis toasted. They clinked glasses as Leo Thompson and 3 other former teammates emerged from the cabin, all dressed in casual evening wear. The guest of honor has arrived, Leo announced, gesturing behind him. From the cabin appeared Miguel Delgado, accompanied by a striking woman with silver-streaked dark hair, Captain Teresa Valdez, now retired from the Scottsdale PD. "Sorry we're late," Miguel said. "Someone insisted on double-checking security at the marina." Valdez smiled unapologetically. "Old habits. We wouldn't have it any other way," Russell assured her, raising his glass. To Teresa, whose instincts for justice match her excellence as an investigator. The group toasted as they settled into the comfortable seating area. The yacht's crew served dinner as they sailed along the coast, the conversation flowing easily among people who shared the unique bond of those who had served together. As the evening progressed, Dennis discreetly handed Russell a tablet. The final report, as requested. Russell excused himself, stepping away to review the document in private. It detailed the current status of everyone connected to what the team now simply called the situation. Brooke remained in federal prison, serving a 20-year sentence for fraud, conspiracy, and solicitation to commit murder. Her mental health had deteriorated significantly after Reeves's death, requiring periodic stays in the psychiatric wing. Thomas T-Bone Malone had received 15 years for his role in the murder-for-hire plot, though his cooperation had spared him a longer sentence. Most interesting was the section on Francis Wheeler, the slender man from Dennis's surveillance photos, Reeves's cellmate and the instrument of his suicide. Wheeler had been released from federal custody 3 months ago, all charges against him mysteriously dropped. He had immediately left the country for Uruguay, where he now lived in a comfortable house with no visible means of support. The final page contained financial records showing the distribution of recovered funds. $100,000 to a scholarship fund for children of fallen Special Forces operators, $50,000 to a women's shelter in Scottsdale, and most significantly, $175,000 to various members of Reeves's family, his elderly mother, his sister raising 3 children alone, his brother caring for a disabled child. Russell deleted the file and returned to the group, where Chief Richardson had now joined them. "Bull," Russell greeted him. "I didn't think you could make it. And Miss Teresa's retirement celebration? Not a chance." Richardson handed Russell a folded newspaper. "Thought you might find this interesting." The article detailed the FBI's successful prosecution of an international money laundering ring operating through Costa Rica. Among those arrested was a banker who had worked closely with Alec Reeves on various investment opportunities. "Justice casts a wide net," Richardson commented. "Indeed it does," Russell agreed. Later, as the yacht anchored in a quiet cove for the night, Russell found himself alone with Valdez on the upper deck. "Beautiful boat," she observed. "Recent acquisition. A fresh start," Russell replied. "New boat, new home, new life." "Speaking of new," Valdez said carefully, "I received a job offer yesterday. Private security consulting for a firm in Washington. They specifically requested me." Russell smiled. "You'd be perfect for it." The recommendation came from someone named Russell Wyatt. She gave him a knowing look. Strange coincidence. The world is full of them. Valdez leaned against the railing. I've spent my career figuring people out, reading between the lines, connecting dots. And what dots have you connected, Teresa? That justice and revenge aren't always separate concepts, she said thoughtfully. Sometimes they run parallel, like train tracks heading to the same destination. Russell considered this. "In my experience, the best strategy isn't about choosing between justice and revenge. It's about ensuring both are served simultaneously, so perfectly that no one can tell where one ends and the other begins. Like what happened with Reeves." Russell's expression revealed nothing. Reeves made his choices. So did Brooke. So did I. And Wheeler. Valdez asked quietly. What choice did he make? To accept an opportunity when it presented itself, Russell replied simply. Some debts can never be repaid, but they can be redirected to better purposes. Valdez nodded slowly, like supporting Reeves's innocent family members with the recovered money. Russell looked surprised. I told you I connect dots, she smiled. That's why I'll take the consulting job. I appreciate working with people who understand that justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about protecting the innocent. Welcome to the team, Teresa, Russell said, offering his hand. As they shook, his phone buzzed with a message, An alert from his security system showing someone approaching his Miami penthouse. The facial recognition identified the visitor as Paula Reeves, Alex's sister, carrying flowers. The message she had left at the front desk was simple. Thank you for remembering the ones he forgot. Russell deleted the alert without comment. Some acknowledgments required no response. Later that night, alone in his stateroom, Russell opened his safe and removed the final item connected to his former life, his wedding ring. He hadn't worn it since the night of Brooke's arrest, but had kept it as a reminder of the price of trust given too freely. He walked to the deck and stood at the railing, the platinum band gleaming in the moonlight. Without ceremony, he dropped it into the dark waters below. There was a soft sound behind him. Russell turned to find Dennis standing there. "Is it finally over?" Dennis asked quietly. Russell looked out at the endless horizon,